Hello, everybody. How are we tonight? It
Are you
is.
asking? Are you asking me or everybody there,
I'm
Sneaker?
asking everybody,
Hi,
everybody but
everybody.
yourself included. Hello, Cal. How are we?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Yeah, I'm good. Excited to
Good.
be starting 5 minutes early. What's going on?
5 minutes early. Intern left time.
Yeah, 5 minutes late in everybody else's time.
We like to keep you guys on your toes. We appreciate it. Me and Cal both look a little bit cold this evening. Just to clarify, we're northward. Cal's got a little tiny blanket, and I'm wearing I think, Arctic fleece. So we're trying to keep warm in the harsh northern winds. I'm not going to be coming out of this fleece really again until probably like April-ish. So
Just
everybody
living
better
it
get used.
forever.
Yeah, get used to this. This is what it's going to be from now on. But thank you all for joining us. It is very nice to have you with us on this very cold winter evening. So for those of you who haven't joined the debrief before, it's a little bit more informal, hence starting with Cal's blanket. And it's more of a chance to kind of chat through some of the stories that we've seen over the course of the week. We did have to cancel Friday's show. So there are a few stories that Cal will take us through as well that we didn't get the chance to cover there. But also, if there's anything that you're like itching to talk about or that you want to hear our thoughts on, you can drop them in the chat. We'll probably go for about hour and a half, did we say? Hour
Yeah,
and a
give or
half,
take.
give
We'll
or
see. We'll
take.
see. We'll see how it goes. If the chat are on fire and they want us to keep going, then we might hang around. But we'll see.
Yeah, if we get the party started in the
Yeah,
chat,
and
as you
I
said,
know we didn't agree to that beforehand, but I'm just putting that out there now.
held hostage at this stage. Yeah, so we've got like a few different things. One thing for me that's front of mind this week is all of this kind of, we had the announcement from the Labour Party at their conference on the 27th of September where they were talking about introducing these like snoopers charter basically powers for the Department of Work and Pensions in terms of tackling fraud, error and debt being very small apparently because their policies haven't said anything about addressing error or debt. They're only talking about targeting fraud. But for get myself stressed about it, we'll talk about that a little bit later. And sort of the back and forth that we've seen, we've had the Labour Party saying, no, actually, we're not going to have the power to go into people's bank accounts. We've then had a lot of disability unions, groups like the NSUN, who have said, like, actually, well, it doesn't really matter either way. It's still a big affront and like attempt to surveil vulnerable people. We also saw 100 days of the Labour Party last Friday. That was their first
No, it's
100
today.
days. Is it today?
I'm sure it's today. It might have been yesterday. It's this weekend anyway.
This weekend.
Depends.
Okay.
It depends on where you count day one. If you count day one as the 4th of July, if you count day one as the 5th of July, or if you count day one as the following Monday, it depends on sort of where you start the count from. But it's this weekend.
It all depends on how you celebrate.
Yeah,
really.
and I froze there, didn't I? Great.
You
great
did
start
freeze
to
for a
the
little
show.
bit, but it was a good explanation. And then we also have, obviously, with Cal joining us, that means we have an update on the Green Party.
No, yeah, we do actually. Green Party winning by-elections, but is all as it seems. We'll find out.
We'll find out.
That's
I
all I'm
can't
saying
wait.
on that.
And then I think the other thing is we will go through a couple of the updates from the Israeli attacks on UN peacekeepers. There's been, again, a huge amount of devastating action being taken over the weekend as well. So I think we'll go through a little bit of the updates on that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyone who is joining, hi Ali, hi Luna, hi Becca, hi everybody. Jim, it's nice to see you all. Please do like, comment, engage, share, whatever you want to do, really. Clip us, maybe not out of context, whatever you'd like to do.
Preferably not out of context.
Preferably not, but just a clip of Cal frozen whilst explaining.
Is that a clip or is that a photograph?
Frozen
it's a screenshot.
That's just a screenshot. Yeah, any of those things, all of your support, it's always appreciated. I love the when we join on as well, and we've got like our regulars in the chat, so it's really nice to see you all. Appreciate all the support as always. Shall what would you like to go through first? What do you
Well,
want to start with?
before we do anything, I'm going to do it now before we forget to do it, which is just to remind everyone talking about our fantastic viewers that obviously Turn Left is still a voluntary organisation. There are 5 of us currently contributing. We've got other jobs. Most of us work full time, and we do this on a voluntary basis alongside everything else. We would love to be able to make Turn Left a fully realised media organisation, and we can only do that with your help and support. So if you want to support us, you can do so in the ways that Sneakerit's already alluded to, by liking, sharing, commenting, clipping us if you wish as well, getting our content out there. But you can also contribute financially if you're able to. We wouldn't expect anybody to give any money that they can't afford. So please only do so if you can afford to. And again, only give what you can afford if you choose to do so. But you can do that by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, where you'll be able to make either a one-off donation or you can commit to a monthly amount if you wish. But I just thought, get that done now because I will forget to do it later on.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just did. So thank you for remembering that one. I was also going to say, actually, I don't know, because I know quite a lot of our followers come from YouTube only or from Twitter, but then we've got TikTok and we've got an Instagram, and we've been working hard on putting more stuff out via those now. So if you're not following us over on Instagram or on TikTok, if you search Turn Left Media, if you search Turn Left on TikTok, you'll just get loads of references to that Doctor Who episode. But if you search Turn Left Media, you'll get us on there. I think Lewis made a video the other day that's got like 150,000 views. So we're very motivated now.
Yeah,
to be posting.
Lewis has got a knack for getting the videos that go a bit viral, hasn't he? But yeah, we are Turn Left Media on TikTok. That's us.
There we are.
As well as on Instagram.
So yes, please do follow, engage, support. Yeah, what should we start with? Do you want to do the Green Party update? Because I feel like it's been front of mind for you over the week.
Yeah, cool. So Green Party update from me. Who'd have thought it? Who'd have thought it? So yeah, on Thursday there was another by-election win for the Green Party. This time it was in Farnley and Wortley, which is in Leeds. It was a council by-election, and this is following on from the success in Lancaster the week before as well, where they won another seat there from Labour. Now, as a fellow member of the Green Party, have I ever mentioned the fact that I am? Obviously, I'm delighted with this news, as are many other Greens. And the Green Party, on the whole, are celebrating and sort of seeing this as a huge win for the Greens. It's another seat taken from Labour. However, is all as it seems. It may perhaps not be. If we look at some party political favourability, and we've not got any graphics for you tonight, but according to a recent YouGov poll, the Green Party actually have a higher favourability than any other one of the political parties amongst everyone that was polled, and they also have a higher favourability specifically among Labour members and supporters, which I think is quite interesting. That even Labour's ardent supporters find the Green Party more favourably than they do the Labour Party, and the reason for that is partly because more of them have a less favourable view of the Labour Party than they do the Green Party, if that makes sense. It's how they work out the favourability scores. Excuse me. That said, in Farnley and Wortley in Leeds, I don't know if it's Wortley or Wortley, it's Wortley. So apologies if I'm butchering that pronunciation there for anyone in Leeds. Looking at the result of that election, 38.7% of the vote share went to the Green Party, with 25.8% going to Labour. So that's Labour are down 20 points on that vote. However, Reform UK stood a candidate in this seat for the first time, and they received 24.4% of the vote share, which looks to me, the Greens are only up 3.4 percentage points on the previous vote there, whereas Reform have nearly got a whopping quarter of the entire vote share, which suggests to me that the Greens aren't winning there because people prefer them to Labour, even though that is what national polling suggests. It appears that the Greens are winning there because the Labour vote share is going to Reform.
Yeah.
which I find quite concerning. I mean, I got frozen again, haven't I?
You froze briefly, but you've caught back up again now.
Apologies. Yeah, so I'm slightly concerned by this because it appears to be a trend in other places as well. I'm delighted that the Greens have won another seat, and again that they've won another seat from Labour. You know, the more Green councillors that we can get, as far as I'm concerned, the better. And I think it's a huge win for the left. The more left wing candidates we get winning seats in local elections, the better. But it concerns me that it feels a bit like what we saw on election night, where Labour were winning seats left, right, and centre because the Conservative Party were hemorrhaging votes. And it seems that what's happened in Leeds on Thursday is that Labour have absolutely hemorrhaged their vote share. And it seems that a lot of that share of the vote has gone to Reform UK, which has then led to the Greens winning because they were the next party behind. But while a win for the Greens is great, is it a win for the Greens, or is it actually just a huge loss for Labour that has happened due to a jump to Reform?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a body said in the chat that the turnout was 20%. I think the Greens they've always like famously done well in like local elections, right? And like council seats. And I think generally we have the feeling that they do well because of like it being seen as more realistic, essentially, that they could win. We know that like the Labour Party didn't win this election because they had gained popular support. Like the problem that they continue to face is they're trying to mimic right-wing rhetoric, but they're not as good at being right-wing crazy people as the Tories or as Reform. So I wouldn't be surprised that people are turning away from Labour and going over to Green. I also am not that surprised that there's people who voted Labour just because they wanted to get away from the Tories and they thought it was realistic. And now they've seen that Labour are literally carrying on Tory policy. They're going to shift over to Reform because they're engendering that kind of viewpoint. They're engendering that kind of perspective from people, right?
Yeah, I think that point that everybody pointed out, turnout was 20%. We'll take your word for that one. I've not got the figure in front of me, but when turnout is low, we then have to also take that into account in terms of, we can't if turnout's been that low, we can't just assume that it's a sort of a picture of everywhere else. However, the fact that Reform voters are coming out to the point where Reform are getting 24.4% of the vote share on like a new candidate in an area where they've not stood a council before. Labour are down 20 percentage points, and the Greens have won, but they've only gained 3.4 points. That tells me that Labour's share of the vote is going to Reform. Or, I suppose another way of looking at it with the low turnout is perhaps Labour voters just didn't turn up because they were thinking, wow, we just won an election. Of course, we're going to win the local seat. And they maybe just didn't bother to go out and vote.
Or because they're embarrassed.
Well, that too.
Public shame. That's the difference, I think, between Labour voters currently and Reform voters. Is primarily Reform voters have no shame, and Labour voters are a bit embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's worth pointing out also in that election that the Conservative vote was down 7.2 percentage points, and they got 5.4% of the vote. And the Lib Dems were down 1.6%, and the SDP were also down 0.9%. So the only party that actually gained any percentage points, the only two parties that gained any points were the Greens, who were up 3.4. And Reform, but Reform came in having never stood in that council's ward before,
right?
With a quarter of the vote share. Every other political party was down on the previous vote. Now, again, that could be to do with when the election was held. By-elections often have lower turnouts than others, particularly when we've just had a general election as well. But what concerns me is there's been more polling done recently, and there was some statistics that I saw this afternoon. One specifically in regards to, oh my God, his name has just disappeared from my head. Luke Akehurst in the Northeast, whereby if there was an election in his seat today, Reform would win. He would lose his seat to Reform. And there are, in this sort of group of polling that's come out over the weekend, they're all predicting Reform to win more and more and more parliamentary seats. Now, I realise it's far too early in this sort of next election cycle to even really take any of that seriously in terms of what's going to happen in 2029. But if we also look at what's been taking place in the by-elections and we see the increase in support for Reform, I am concerned that even though we're seeing the Greens win new seats, which I'm delighted about, I feel like the Greens are winning because people are voting Reform, just like Labour won because people weren't voting
Tory
for the Conservatives, right? And that concerns me. I don't know how you feel about it, but
yeah, I mean, I was just looking, I've just dropped it in the chat that the vote share, like the overall voting for it, the Labour, the Green Party got 1,450 votes, Labour got 965, and Reformed he's called David Dresser. He sounds like a cartoon, like a Cluedo character. David Dresser got 912 votes. And this is completely not a valuable insight from my side, actually, now that I'm saying it. But just to put it in perspective,
here's some statistics, but they're not valuable.
Here's a statistic specifically related to my life. When I was in youth parliament as a youngster, I got elected with 1,500 votes. So
well done.
Thank you. That's all. That's all. Just saying. But it's not a huge amount of votes. I think the Green Party does do better when it comes to local active engagement. I do think they have a lot of like local events happening all the time, and especially in areas with by-elections. I think they were running a talk the other day that was specifically on like why do Green councillors win so many local seats. Whereas when it comes to Bercow was just showing off. That was it. Just to be clear, I would never show off about having been in youth parliament. That's not something I consider to be one of my like flexes in my life.
But you got to go down to the House of Commons and like sit in the green chairs and like talk a bit, did you not?
I did, so, and I got a signed photograph of John Bercow.
Of course you did. So I mean, you're probably one of the only people from Turn Left who actually has sat in the green benches in the House of Commons. So I mean, that's a claim to fame right there. It's worth pointing out, I hadn't realised actually until you just posted this, that this seat had been a Green seat, was lost to Labour. That's how that reads anyway. He regained the seat that he lost to Labour, which I think, given I think that makes it worse. It was a Green seat. The Greens lost the seat to Labour. The Greens have now got the seat back. But again, the drop in the vote share for the Labour Party has seemingly gone to Reform UK.
Yeah.
The Greens didn't win because people voted Greens. Greens won because people voted Reform.
Yeah, I do think you're always going to get the most polarized parties are going to be the ones that have the highest turnout. I think the Greens are doing very well at engaging a younger voter demographic. People have been a little bit invigorated from the election from it. But then also Reform, it's like we always say whenever there's an election, when there was the referendum on Brexit, the people who are far right, the people who are on the right will always turn out to vote. Like they will always show up and vote. So you have to be engaged on the other side, because one thing that will always happen is a bunch of old people will turn up without having read any manifestos and just vote Tory, and that's it. And I think Reform voters are the same. They feel invigorated in the same, like them and the Greens, they both gained seats, right, in the election. They've both been empowered in that sense. Whereas Labour, you probably got complacency and also not that many people.
Yeah, I mean, that said, I mean, looking at, so British, this is from More in Common, but it's been reshared by Stats for Lefties, which if you are a lefty, which you are if you're watching us, let's be honest, they're on Twitter. They're actually a really interesting resource for breaking down data that other people and other polling groups sort of pull together. But the current British voting intention for the 2029 general election has Labour and the Conservatives both on 27%.
Oy.
with Reform on 21, the Lib Dems on 13, and the Greens on 7. But it does have Reform winning in seats like Bridget Phillipson's seat in Sunderland, North Durham in Luke Akehurst's seat, and also Barnsley South, Dudley, Horton and Sunderland South, North Durham, Sunderland Central, and Llanelli, I think.
I've put something up. Is this it?
That is that's a different one. Where did you get that one?
That was from Stats for Lefties. Reform. Is this not good?
British? Oh, that's the seat estimate. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
That's the seat estimate. I was looking at the projected result.
Well, I've tried something.
But no, that's cool. That's cool. But yeah, so I mean, you got it.
I can bring it up. It will do the weird thing again where it shows half our faces on the side, if that's okay with you.
It's fine.
We're having a chill, relaxed live. You're having a snack. I'm putting the overlay on wrong. There we go. That's the
one I'm referring to. Yeah. So 27% for Labour and the Conservatives, with Reform on 21%, Lib Dems on 13, and the Greens on 7, which is up slightly for the Greens, which is always good. Lib Dem up slightly as well. But the problem with that, the thing that concerns me with that is that would see Labour losing in total 23 seats to Reform.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do we think that's likely?
I mean, yeah, I think, to be honest, this is going to tie into some of the other stuff around like the universal credit side of things, also around like the 100 days in power, carrying on loads of Tory policies. There's a good comment in the chat from Charlotte who has said, the only way we're going to stop the swing to the right is by fundamentally improving people's quality of life, which isn't going to happen with the Labour Party. So I'm feeling a bit hopeless at the minute. The thing is, like, I know there were a lot of people on election night this year who were like horrified when they saw the exit polls showing a lot of support for Reform.
Well, we reported it live, didn't we? We were doing the live show, and when that exit poll came out, you know, me and Lewis were there in the background, frantically making the graphic once we had it, so we could get it up. And I was gobsmacked. I mean, I'm grateful that it didn't go the way that it was predicted to, but my God, it was a terrifying moment when we saw that.
Mm-hmm. This is something that one of my areas of special interest when it comes to politics is the rise of the far right and populism, right? Like, to be honest, I run the risk of running into like leftist populism at different times. But the far right populists will always rise when you're in times of like economic inequality, extreme inequality, when you're in times of like shifting demographics within the country. So if you've had like immigration, if you've had multiculturalism developing, like if there have been significant amounts of social progress made, there's generally a backswing against that because people feel like they're losing their identity. You have this rise of civic nationalism because people don't have anything else to take pride in. And it's the same thing. I'm reading a book at the minute, actually. It's this book. It's called What White People Can Do Next by Emma Debrief, where she also talks about whiteness being a really important part for people. Because if you don't have anything else to be proud of or to feel superior about, like, you can't be proud of your career, you can't be proud of your living situation, you don't have any aspirational goals. The one thing that you do have is stuff that is inherent within you as a person that can't be changed. So civic nationalism comes from this same sense of like white supremacy, basically, of like, the only thing I have to be proud of. It's the same reason we had the platy jubes, everyone went crazy about the Queen. It's the like all of these different things where we can say, well, by nature of me being like popped out of vagina in this location, I'm better than everyone else. It gives people a chance to think that. I know that went a little bit on a tangent, but that's why Reform is rising.
It gives me an opportunity to promote the book I'm reading at the moment, which is Another England: How to Reclaim Our National Story, which is Caroline Lucas's book, and she talks about similar sort of ideas and about the fact that something that she says really early on in the book is about the fact that the English flag is not owned by the far right. They might use it sometimes at their rallies and wave it and use it as their as the sort of symbol. I got into trouble with a few people that weren't happy with my wording on a TikTok I did, where I talked about British flag waving idiots, because some people weren't happy with the way I'd worded that, and it's understandable. It's fine, but this idea that the flag it doesn't belong to the far right. English identity and British identity doesn't belong to the far right. Anyone that was born in this country, anyone that has settled in this country, anyone in this country who thinks of themselves as British or English has the right to, or Welsh or Scottish or Irish, has the right to have that identity and to be proud of that identity. But we need to find a way to reclaim that for everybody else. And I don't know myself exactly how we go about doing that, but I do think it's important in this. I mean, it's also worth pointing out, Jim said something just before, which I can't find the comment now, but it was, I've got it here, which I just thought we've got to bear that in mind. I think polling for an election, frozen again. I'll just keep talking. I think polling for an election 5 years in the future is just an exercise in futility. And let's be real, right? The elections, this isn't the US. We've not got an election in a month. This is 2029 we're talking about. And what's the famous saying, a week is a long time in politics? Well, 5 years is even longer. And if we listen to reform voters, by then, Sadiq Khan's going to be the prime minister anyway. We're going to have Sharia law in this country. And there's going to be lots of other things that are going to be shaping the political landscape. So, maybe I'm jumping the gun, getting concerned. But what does concern me is when you look at local results in the by-elections, as we started talking about, at the beginning of this story, which, while it's great to see the left doing well and Greens winning back seats that they've lost previously, or Greens winning new seats, as was the case in Lancaster, where they became the biggest party on the council, we do need to bear in mind how people are voting in the other areas. And even with low turnout, certainly right now, there is a huge support for reform. I mean, reform's membership, at the last I looked at was over 80,000, which is almost double the membership of the Green Party, and they've been around 5-10 years tops.
I mean, my one hope is that, much like all of his other jobs, Nigel Farage is going to get bored and sack it off, because I mean, what happened with UKIP? He steps down. That's another thing of far-right populist, right? It completely relies on the charismatic leader. When Nigel Farage stepped down from UKIP, the whole thing went to shit. Then he was in that other one, the Brexit Party. That all went to shit.
Yeah, apologies. Just to correct what I said, it's not double. So the Green Party are currently on roughly 59,000 members. So 59,000, and as of the most recent count that's been updated on the Wikipedia page, at least, Reform is still on 80,000 plus. So it's 20,000 more than the Greens have got, but they've got that membership within a very short space of time.
Yes, and yes, Charlotte's just said in the chat, worst thing for Farage is to actually be held to do a job. Actually, just to be clear, I mentioned civic nationalism. So there's a combination of different areas when you talk about like nationalism, right? You've got ethno-nationalism, and you've got two sides of like far right populism, basically, and like the characteristics that they pull in. When you talk about like the extreme right, you're talking about ethno-nationalists. So when you think about the BNP, who used to say like the bloodline is being diverse, is like being diluted, and all of that kind of insane shit, like who want to go back to like, if you're not 10 generations British, you have to leave the country, and all of that stuff. And they're considered to be the extreme right. They normally revert to like violence a lot more often. But then when you go over to civic nationalism, there is a liberal version of civic nationalism, which is the whole idea of like, as long as we all engage in the culture, it doesn't matter where you're from, I think Abody mentioned in the chat, like in Scotland, like the SNP style, there is that kind of civic nationalism. But then there's another side to that, which is where you base your identity on, it's on those same acts, but it's very much based on like a cultural hegemony of like, we should all behave like British citizens, have British culture. And I do think with reform, they're not entirely civic nationalism. They do bleed into ethno-nationalism, because they still have that undercurrent of clear, like obvious racism. But the way that they position themselves is more about, we're British culture, we want patriotic stuff taught in schools, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify on that one as
That
well.
all said, given some within the Conservative Party think that MPs have shot themselves in the foot with the most recent turnout for voting for the leadership, the Conservative Party are about to get a right-wing nutter running the party, whether it's Robert Jenrick or whether it's Kemi Badenoch, right? Either way, they're ending up with a right-wing nutter. So, in a way, that might sort of put a stop to some of reform. I know Nigel Farage has spoken out against both of them. Obviously, he has to, because he's going to lose members and he's going to lose votes otherwise. But Robert Jenrick, very much against the ECHR, for example, and what the right are really good at is throwing their principles out of the window if it means they can get something that they want. So if that means not voting Reform and voting for the Conservatives because they've got Robert Jenrick, for example, because it'll get us out of the ECHR, that blasted thing that gives us human rights and the right to a weekend and the right to a private life and all those awful, terrible things that we don't want anymore, apparently. They might be more inclined to vote Conservative than they would be Reform. At the moment, Rishi Sunak's still the leader of the Conservative Party. So any polling that comes out right now, not only with what Jim was referring to in the comments earlier about the fact that he's 5 years down the line, we also have to bear in mind what the Conservatives are currently offering versus what they're going to be offering in 3 weeks or so time, when when the party has a new leader, because I think that will reel back some of the votes that the Conservatives at least have lost to Reform.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a race to the bottom. I could not. I made a video about it. I completely zoned out from the Tory leadership election. I just didn't even bother look. That was one of those things where there's so much news going on, and I'm also just trying to be a person in the world and live my life and function and remember to eat 3 times a day. And I don't have
Wait, it was
time
supposed
to
to eat
think
3
about.
times a day?
Well, yeah, literally. It turns out, and you have to
no.
cook all those meals sometimes, and that's
What?
just overwhelming as is. And there's a lot of expectations, and you got to make a TikTok every now and again. And I didn't have time to think about what Robert Jenrick was doing. And then when I came back around to it, it's like he said his child's middle name is Thatcher, which is an insane move, because why not have the middle name Margaret if you're going to have one? And then
is the child? I know I've frozen again. I am going to try and fix this. Is the child? What's the child's full name? I mean, I don't like to talk about politicians' children, but
I have no idea. But their middle name is Thatcher, which is just that literally sounds like, when someone's like, "Danger's my middle name, Thatcher's my middle name," just let everyone know you're a dick.
But why?
I don't know. It feels like it should be child abuse.
I do apologise for the technical difficulties here. I am trying to fix my my issue. So please just bear with me. You can still hear me though, and that's the important thing. I mean, it is a podcast. It doesn't necessarily have to be visuals, right? So everyone watching on YouTube,
you've seen The Fleece. You don't really need to keep watching. Yeah, it's a girl. Her middle name is Thatcher, which is even
why
more
not
devastating.
Margaret though? Like you say, why not Margaret?
Inexplicable, because it's virtue signaling, because that's what they do. I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's about to go absolutely haywire. I think, again, the other thing that I have from the other thing that worries me from the whole rise of far right populism thing is that it's often preceded by a weak centrist government that is determined to keep out the far left and the far right. And we don't really have a far left in the country. So what you generally get to see is a weakened centrist government that tries to appeal to right-wing rhetoric, and then by doing that encourages more right-wing rhetoric and plays into that narrative. But then they can't do right-wing as well as the insane parties, and then they get elected. So Keir Starmer said before the election, the only thing that can stop a right-wing, the rise of the far right, is a progressive party. And it was like, okay, do you have one of those? Do you know where they might be?
No.
But yeah, no, I think it is concerning. I do think Reform have a strong chance of imploding next election, either for legal issues, either Nigel Farage loses interest, or they, like, when I was looking through, when we were trying to find if my Reform candidate existed, before
Oh yeah. Oh, did we ever solve that?
She did exist. She did exist. She was actually one of the party. She was a party. Apparently, she was always on like the merch stands at the Reform events. So she was like a mate of a Reform.
Oh yeah, we did find she had a business with somebody else that was questionable.
Yeah, she was a fan. She was like a mate of Richard Tice and co. And what we found was actually the Reform candidates didn't not exist. They were candidates that had been parachuted in against the will of the local Reform Party members. And there were a lot of local Reform Party members who'd been told they were going to be able to stand, who at the last minute were pulled out and replaced with pals of the top. So there was a lot. I ended up in like Reform Facebook discourse, which is very scary place to be. Don't go there on purpose, ever. And it was a lot of people complaining that they had no say in the party.
I mean, you could always turn up at an address that's registered as the local Reform office and walk in and see all the folk that are there. As you know, that would be better than joining a Facebook group, right?
Well, it would be, but I was scared. I was very. I did actually have some people offer. I had some people offer to go on my behalf and just ask around, but they are like, the Reform Party has a problem of wanting to have a respectable face, but also fully knowing that their membership are absolutely unhinged and will do extremely weird stuff. So they have to maintain that facade, that forward-facing facade of like, no, we're proper politicians. And they can't do that if they let their party membership actually be democratic, because if they did, they'd just be doing racial attacks all the time.
Oh, heaven forbid! Heaven forbid. Sneaker, I would like to address a comment, if I may, that Martin's just submitted. So, things are going to have to start improving in Britain because the far right are just waiting in the wings. But no one in these comment sections or channels seems to want to do anything practical.
Martin.
I would disagree with you, Martin. I think that all of us here at Turn Left want to do something practical. And one of the things that we do that is practical is holding government to account, educating people on what is actually happening, and tackling misinformation, something that Sneaker is brilliant at doing, alongside helping people understand media literacy as well. But also, a lot of us in Turn Left work alongside organisations that make a real change in society or in the world, and we also take part in a lot of other things in our spare time, other organisations, other groups that do the same thing. And we would always encourage people that watch our content to do the same, to join a union. You can take action that way, to get involved with local community groups as well. But I think we can't underestimate the importance of media, right? And using platforms like this, and people that watch, and you know, Martin says, I'm not knocking this channel, but the left has to start building. No, and I totally understand you're not knocking the channel. You know, we've seen you here quite a bit, and we're grateful for your input. But I do think that I do feel it's a little unfair to sort of just jump in assuming that people don't want to do things that are practical, because a lot of us certainly do.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of other things around that which is very broad. I agree, it can often feel like when you're on the left, you're just wallowing because everybody's going, like, we've talked about it as well in terms of sometimes when we cover stories, we talk about it afterwards, but we both just go, that's shit. Yep, that's shit, and then we have to move on. I think one of the issues is, firstly, actual visibility of certain stories. Also, this channel is not just about sharing these stories, because a lot of the people in the chat already know the story. There's a huge part of political action which is around building support for each other and actually empowering each other. I don't know if you've had being at the Palestine protests. A lot of going to the Palestine protest is about empowering other protesters to keep taking action. It's not 100%. Just because, like, we don't think that when we do a march, the government is going to go, oh, you know what? Yeah, we will stop arms sales. It's about demonstrating the story to other people. It's about building solidarity between you. It's about demonstrating to Palestinians that you're still fighting. So when we do this channel, it's not just about sharing stories or complaining. It's about building strength within other people, and also signposting to resources, actions that people can take practically in their lives, but also educating yourself. Like, education is such an important part of it, because a lot of people, when you talk about taking political progress and building something, they literally think, okay, what's the next political party we can build? Because they think that parliamentary politics is the only place where political action happens, and that's one arena out of so many others.
And
it's just important to keep all that in mind.
The example I always give of that is, just to keep the green flag flying, is Caroline Lucas, who one of the reasons that she gave for stepping down as an MP at this last election is because she actually felt, and bear in mind she was an MP for a while, you know, she came in 2010, so she did 14 years as the only Green MP, and she felt that she actually had more power to make change as an activist on the outside, as she did as a politician on the inside. Abodi, I'm not sure why YouTube censored that comment, but I do agree with you that the left needs to identify problems first, and I do also agree that too much of the discourse can be superficial. But I do think it's important that we still have the discourse as well, because we need to be able to educate, and to we can't make sense of what's going on if we don't talk about it.
This is a really practical thing too. There's a lot of social media activism where people just talk and they don't provide sources, they don't provide follow-up information. I was talking to a friend of mine, Han reads stuff on TikTok about this the other day. A lot of information that you get from social media now is extractive, which means that you consume that piece of information and you don't do anything else with it. You just consume it, and then you just don't learn anything else. You don't take any action from it. And that's why people get into doom scrolling, and it get very frustrating. So a lot of the things that you can look out for when you're kind of trying to differentiate between this sort of discourse for discourse sake, or basically grifters. A lot of people who will talk about, what was it, when Brittany Broski was like, solidarity costs you nothing. It doesn't cost you nothing. Like, you can't just go on the internet and say everything's bad and then not have anything else that follows it up, because then you're just taking advantage and exploiting people's suffering for content. There's a lot of things where you should always have follow-up resources being shared from people. You should always have additional information to pull out the back of it. You should always have signposting to actions that people can take. And you should also be reflecting that offline as well. There's no point going online, reposting 3 things, and then not giving a shit about the rest of it. If you're sharing pro-Palestine content on social media, but when someone says something that plays into like Zionist rhetoric in your workplace or with your friends, and you don't call it out, if you're not also boycotting, if you're not also making efforts outside of the internet, then you're not really doing any activism. So I do get that point. But it's true. Like, I mean, we all wallow every now and again, because it's really, it's really fucking annoying being a leftist. It's so much easier to be right wing.
It's easier to be in our sort of area. It's easier to be right wing in the media as well. You know, it's easier to make a living out of being a right wing commentator, it seems, because that's sort of inflammatory. Not that all right wingers are inflammatory, but you know, a lot of them use the sort of
I'm inflamed by all of them.
Culture war rhetoric that gets people angry. You know. It was said in the Reform conference a number of times, you know, about, oh, well, you should be angry about this. You need to be angry about that. They'd make a statement in one of the speeches and say, I hope you're all angry about that. Good, you're angry about it. Brilliant. That's what we want, because they want people to be wound up, because when people are angry, they're not going to think rationally. I mean, we know the way that the brain works, that when you're, you know,
it switches off your critical thinking.
Yeah, it switches that off and it goes into an emotional response, and that's helpful and that's useful. You know, we've developed emotional responses as human beings for a reason. But when it comes to actually understanding and breaking down the facts and like you said, the critical thinking side of it, the brain physically doesn't work in a way that allows you to do both. So if you're really angry and upset about something, then you're not looking at it from a logical perspective where you can actually make a reasoned debate and understanding of what's going on.
Which is why critical thinking is so important.
100%. But yes, we should probably move on.
We should, but it's good to have these conversations. And I think, this is something that we're talking about the other day as well. Like, there's so many important conversations that don't get to happen in mainstream media, because the presence of the far right makes it impossible, because they're pushing that Overton window all the time over to the right. And you end up basically having to argue with, like, yeah, should trans women be allowed in women's bathrooms? And you don't get to talk about a lot more of these kind of more nuanced points, or like, what does progress actually look like on the left? Like, we don't get to talk about whether or not parliamentary politics is a realistic avenue. We don't get to talk about the tools of the oppressor. So I think it's really good to be able to talk through this stuff as well. The other story, so I wanted to talk about the fraud, debt, and error bill, basically, which ties into Labour being in for 100 days. It ties into what we were saying just now about like Labour support being on the decline, and the sort of rise of the far right on that side as well. Basically, Labour announced it on the 27th of September, I think, at their conference, that they were going to be bringing out this fraud, debt, and error bill, which is a chance for... It's supposed to be addressing the fact that we've got this massive hole in funding that is being lost through the Department for Work and Pensions, through what they referred to at the time as fraud, error, and debt. The actual statement that they made, the release that they published, did not talk about addressing error or addressing debt in DWP. It only talked about giving DWP more power to investigate fraud. They actually also said in the article that fraud is getting a lot more sophisticated these days, and that's why they need more power. And one of the things that they mentioned was giving, basically obliging banks to give access to financial information for people who are claiming benefits, basically, in order to check whether or not they've had overpayments or whether or not they are actually eligible. Now, obviously, that caused a huge uproar because get out of our bank accounts, DWP. Labour have now said, they said specifically, let me see, they literally tried to come back on it and say that these claims that people are going to have their finances spied on are false, because these powers will be used appropriately and proportionately through robust new oversight and reporting rules. And our staff will be trained to the highest possible standards. So, I mean, I don't know if Labour know anything about proportionate responses. Based on the track record of Labour so far, I wouldn't say oh, great, yeah, they're the people I know. I trust them to talk about appropriate and proportionate. And I don't think DWP staff are the ones where I'd go, they strike me as being super, super highly trained, like laser focused. I don't trust them to mess up any information. So they've tried to walk it back a little bit and say it's not going to be that intense. However, 75% of overpayments made by DWP, like in their own registration, are marked as their error, official error. They have caused these errors. I made a video about this, talking about my own experience dealing with DWP, which is absolutely... Me and my husband aren't on DWP. We've never done anything with DWP. We've never been on universal credit, never claimed anything. My husband isn't actually eligible for it because he's got pre-settled status.
It's crazy. I was watching that video earlier though, and I know I assume you're going to talk about it now, but what you went through with that was just utter madness.
It's still happening. I have to call universal credit tomorrow.
But unfortunately, you will not be the only one that's experienced something like this.
No, I'm not. And this is the thing. I mean, very, very, very long, drawn out, frustrating story short. My husband got a letter out of nowhere last year in like spring saying that he owed DWP over £3,000 in universal credit overpayments. He's never been on universal credit. We couldn't access any information from anyone at DWP because he didn't have a universal credit account. Yet they'd managed to put all of his other information into this thing. And they were saying they were going to send repo men to our house. Someone called him when he was at work during a shift in a kitchen and said, well, you better find time to talk because you've got this money hanging over your head. He's got pre-settled status. So anything to do with him owing money or any issue is absolutely terrifying. I got hung up on by people. I had one person say, yeah, this happens a lot. And they apologized twice. And in both apology letters, they spelt my husband's name wrong still. And I still don't know if his information is correct with DWP, but I do know that HMRC still have his information incorrect. It was infuriating as a situation. But in that video's comment section, one woman said, that DWP accidentally declared her dead instead of her brother.
I saw that.
And started to issue her like death. Her employer had to start a death in service program because of that.
And this was because they had the same the same national insurance numbers, except one digit was different.
Yeah. So, and my husband's one, it was that he's got an Eastern European name. His name is literally unique. There's no one else in the UK with that last name. And they merged it inexplicably. But we were told constantly, like, we think it's a fraud issue. We think it's an issue of fraud. I was like, it's clearly not fraud, because who's done the fraud? The account doesn't exist. You've got no tracking of this information. They're like, we're just going to keep investigating. By the way, welcome, Jihadi Baddie, one of from my TikTok space. Very happy to see you over here, and very happy to have you join.
Me too.
But yeah, the overall message that I had with it was, we're talking about giving DWP more power to look into people's lives, look into people's bank accounts, under the guise that this will deal with issues of fraud, as though, and the way that it's always framed is as though almost all of our problems are caused by these people claiming benefits and sneaking around and trying to take advantage of this incredibly generous system. What I've found through personal experience, through statistics, and through hearing the experience of others is that the majority of the time, nobody fucking asks to be given these overpayments. Nobody wants it.
Yes.
And then they're accused of sometimes you've never dealt with them before in your life, and they go, you're doing fraud. Well, you're doing fraud on us. I think they're doing fraud. I think maybe we should figure out how to maybe not, I don't know if they're keeping all their information in like a handwritten like Rolodex kind of situation.
It makes you wonder what's going on, doesn't it? I think it's what you said. I think they're probably using they're using Microsoft Excel, probably running it on like Windows 98 or something, and just not copying data. Although it doesn't bode well for GDPR if they're getting people's figures wrong and declaring people dead that aren't, and merging people like your husband's records with the records of random people with similar names.
Random people. But it's also like between departments, like the fact that the error has occurred between HMRC and DWP. Yeah. When we were dealing with it with DWP, they said, oh, well, sorry, we don't know anything about HMRC. I was like, you don't know anything about HMRC? Surely you know something. Like,
I mean, look, Becca's just put in the comments, we were claiming child tax credits for years and told we were overpaid by $3,000. Spent 2 years stretching to pay it back, only to be told we'd been underpaid by almost the same amount. Like, which is it? Do you owe the money or do they owe the money?
It's unbelievably scary.
I had an issue actually myself where, I mean, to be fair, this was my previous employer's problem. But what's Charlotte saying? Institutional incompetence is a national problem. Why do you think the NHS or councils can't affect change? Yeah. So I had an issue when I worked for the NHS last year, and I left the job. I was essentially forced out. It's a long story, but I left the job in November, and I went on to Universal Credit just after I'd finished. But I'd already, because I'd been off sick for a period of time, I'd already made a claim for Universal Credit, because I was led to believe, I had a long period of sickness, and I was led to believe that I was going to be getting paid under the threshold amount to actually qualify for UC. Yeah. As it turned out, I don't know how they managed to do it, but with my sick pay, but also with some holiday pay that I was owed and some other things, they managed to keep me above the threshold for 5 months. So I was registered for UC for those 5 months, but I never once got a payment from them because I was still getting paid from the NHS. Excuse me, while this was going on, there was other things happening between me and the NHS job, sort of while I was off. And on the 6th month, I left, and the trust that employed me, they didn't take my resignation seriously. They thought I was taking the piss basically, and that I was just throwing a straw because I'd made a complaint and there was other things going on, and I think they thought that I was just sort of throwing a tantrum and that it would blow over. So when I handed in my resignation, they didn't do anything with that for 2 weeks, which meant that they actually triggered my pay for that month that I wouldn't have been entitled to. The day before payday, they then cancelled that way because they realised no, I was actually leaving, so they weren't going to owe me the money because they then had to backdate 2 weeks off when I should have been paid. But they told Universal Credit that I'd been paid. So I then didn't get any UC that month, and UC decided to completely close my claim down because I'd had 6 months at that point with no money being owed to me whatsoever, which meant that I was no longer eligible for Universal Credit, full stop. So I'm then on the phone to them, having not been paid a penny, needing the Universal Credit that month, being told, well, your employer's told us this. But the thing that annoyed me with them, even though that was the employer's fault, when I provided UC with the evidence, they then told me, because we've already closed your account, we can't open the claim. So in order to open the claim, you're going to have to make a new Universal Credit account, which I did. And then they said, oh, but we can't see the details because the details are on an old claim. So I then had to open a new claim, put in the pay dispute under a new Universal Credit claim, and then explain a million times to every single
God,
the entire story from start to finish to explain why it happened. And also in November, if you received Universal Credit in November, you were also eligible for the extra cost of living payment as well for that month. So I was also eligible for that, but I couldn't. But that didn't get paid until I think that was February that got paid. But you had to have been on UC in the November to get it, and it wasn't until something like April of this year that I got that problem resolved, and they then had to pay me a lump sum of what they'd owed me in November plus the cost of living payment on the top. But I'd sent them all the evidence from day one, but because of how their internal systems work, they couldn't handle it because they were like, oh, well, we've already closed your claim. And I'm like, I know, but you shouldn't have closed the claim, it was an error. And it's like, oh, well, it's too late now because it's closed. And it's like, well,
that'll be down as fraud. That'll be down as fraud. They'll have told everyone that's fraud.
Probably, but it's like, well, reopen it, and they're like, well, we can't. It's
yeah,
so
I mean, there are so many stories. I genuinely think for that video that I made that like half of the money that's being lost through fraud, so-called fraud from DWP, you could account for it from the amount of people who got told out of nowhere they owed random money. Charlotte said, this is the thing that it comes down to, because Liz Kendall's also made that announcement about getting people back into work, right? And she said it in very nice words. She's used very nice language about it. But she's also talking about the exact same stuff that Rishi Sunak was talking about when he talked about sick note culture. She's talking about getting people back into work. She's talking about people who have light mental health issues who've been signed off, as though light mental health is some sort of thing that happens. Like, we all just have light mental health problems when we get signed off work, long-term sick. And talking about anyone who can work should work, and getting people back in, blah, 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 blah. It's all the same shit as we've heard before. I don't know if anyone here has had experience with like the work health program in the UK. But my sister's been on it since May of this year. All that's happened to her so far is a woman has called her at random hours in the day, not scheduled any appointments with her, and then sent her text messages to say that she's missed appointments. And then eventually, when my sister did manage to have a meeting with her, she complained about this woman doing this to her caseworker. The caseworker then said he was going to speak to that woman, accidentally called my sister back and left her a voicemail calling her this woman's name. And then my sister messaged again to say, I think you haven't contacted the right woman. That person then called her again and went, hiya, I've done it again. And then now she's found out that this woman she got on the phone with this woman in the end, and this woman said, yeah, I think you need to be referred to the work health program. And she was like, what is this then? Like, this whole idea that people are just avoiding work. There are people who are trying to work who, if they had universal credit support, they could. If they had a support system and a safety net that was there, they could. There's also, when we think about like, loads of people being signed off sick, long-term sick with slight mental health issues. Why do people have mental health issues right now? Where are the mental health issues coming from? Is it a massive amount of destitution that we're living in at the minute? Is it the massive wealth inequality that's happening? Because people get healthier if you stop making them live in shitholes. Like, it's so frustrating to continue this whole.
But also, it's like, well, there's a couple of things here. I think the DWP and the NHS have the same problem, which is that they don't communicate effectively with other departments within the same sort of area. So like you talked about the issues with HMRC and the DWP. you'd think that they would all speak to each other coherently, but they don't. And the NHS have the same problem. But on the mental health issue as well, getting access to mental health care is what is a nightmare. But also when you get access to it, I mean, I recently had a 12 session, and it got extended actually, but I had a 12 session period of CBT. And do not get me wrong, like if you need mental health support and you are offered the opportunity to do it and you think it might work for you, please take it. Like some people have awful experiences, some people have great experiences. So whatever story I'm about to tell, please don't let this deter you from accessing mental health support when you get access to it. However, I found it very, the therapist was lovely, and it was nothing against him personally, but I just found the therapy really not helpful. And my scores, anyone that's had any mental health support will know that you do like a little quiz and they ask you how you're feeling every time, and they give you a score, and depending on how you score, they use that to determine how severe your mental health problem is, basically. My score when I came out of the therapy was as bad as it was when I'd gone into the therapy, so I'd not improved at all. I think my depression scores had improved slightly, but my anxiety scores, which is what the CBT was for, hadn't improved at all. And then they say, well, now you've had therapy, you can't reapply for 3 months. And also, when you can reapply, there's a 3-month waiting list, but I can't apply again for at least 3 months. So it's going to be 6 months before I can get access to any more support again. And it's like, right, okay, so what else is available? And like, well, because you've had this, you need to wait now. Excuse me, and the support isn't consistent. So you end up in a situation where you're struggling to get the mental health support. When you do get it, it's not consistent. And just as you might be getting somewhere, it then stops. Couple that with the fact that you've got the DWP not communicating with itself properly, and then you're going after people that are on sick. What really frightens me about this, which is, and I know it was Rishi Sunak that gave that speech about the sick note culture thing initially, but that now appears to be Labour Party policy, and rather than tackle, it's like you say, rather than tackling why people are off sick, why is it? I mean, the pandemic's got a lot to play for, what's the word? It's got a lot to answer for here in terms of the number of people with mental health, particularly younger people with mental health conditions and mental health problems. But I mean, look, I don't know how many of you watching have ever experienced anxiety, but when you suffer from it and when it hits you, it can really cripple you. And even if it's not every day and all the time, I mean, I've had instances in my past where, well, and recently too, where I've struggled with work because of panic and anxiety attacks, and then actually when I'm in the workplace, it manifests in a way that's a lot more severe than it would if I wasn't in the workplace. Now, luckily for me, I've still been able to work. I did have a period off sick last year, but I have been able to continue working. But for many people, it can be so bad that it does stop them from working. And rather than removing the support that those people are getting and telling those people, well, you're just going to have to go to work, aren't you? You're just going to have to suck it up and work. Because that then adds the financial pressure, because then it's like, crap, if I can't go into work, I'm not going to be able to survive because I'm not going to get that financial support. Which means when you turn up on that first day of that new job that you've got, where you've not told them that you've got anxiety because you're worried that if you tell them you've got anxiety, you're not going to get the job in the first place. You then go and start that job and you're that fucking anxious because you know that if this job doesn't go well, you're not going to be able to support yourself financially. You end up having more anxiety attacks, which then impacts on your work. You fail your probation period, you then haven't got a job, and now it looks like you may not get some of the support that you need. It's a vicious circle, and what the government need to be focusing on is fixing the problems that are causing people's mental health to be more severe. They need to fix the mental health services completely. They need to make it easier. And I was very pleased to see that 111, who I actually used to work for, are now offering mental health support over the phone. Because when I worked there, we weren't even allowed to safeguard people if they had a mental health concern. It was a complete and utter nightmare. So I'm great to see that they're offering that. And when I worked for 111, I worked alongside some brilliant mental health nurses. And I know that they have got some fantastic staff. We just just need to recruit more of them, because with this, like with all of staff within that in the health service, there's not enough of them. But we need to fix that, and we need to tackle the reasons why people are struggling with their mental health, because until we fix that, telling people, well, you need to go to work, otherwise we're going to take your benefits off you, is not going to help people with these problems. It's just going to lead to an increase in people ending up in severe financial difficulty, ending up at homeless or out on the streets, or ending up, putting even more pressure on the NHS, because they're going into work, but then they're spending all the time off sick because they're struggling to work. And then the doctors are there looking at someone who can't fucking work, and they're having to make a decision. Well, do I give them the sick note? Because we're being told that we shouldn't be giving the sick notes out. So what the hell do I do? And I'm going to stop talking because I realise I've just been ranting for the last 10 minutes. But it really annoys me.
No, you're completely right. I think there's a couple of comments that I think are really interesting. I wanted to say CBT, we've all been there, right? We're all on the left, we're all probably at least a bit mentally unstable. It is used as a one size fits all. A lot of people are told, like, well, the turn left, not turn left, I was reading a chat. CBT is like the easiest thing for therapists to qualify. It's not the easiest, but it's the most common. So you'll get referred for CBT almost regardless of the situation that you're experiencing. The fact that it is then, I mean, even looking at it on that base level, like Labour have announced that they're going to bring out these, like, they're going to try and improve mental health support for young people in schools because it's on the rise. On the other hand, we do have, Cal, I'm going to mute you if you tippy tap for a sec.
Sorry.
It's so loud. There we go. You pressed that mute button, it did nothing. It carried on tippy tapping. But
no, did it? Oh well, it's fine. It's all right.
All fine. But when you talk about getting mental health support for kids in schools, and it's like, why do we need so much more mental health support for kids in schools? Why do we need more health support overall? And it's the same, like you said, with the NHS. There are so many people who are in the NHS who are so dedicated to what they do, and they have to be, because you're not there because it gives you a good work-life balance. You're not there because it's, thank you, Jihadi Baddy, for the 5 turn left memberships being gifted. That is very, very kind of you. You also have the issue now of people are struggling to get by financially. When you have poverty or wealth inequality, you get worse outcomes in terms of education, you get worse outcomes in terms of addiction, and it all sort of spirals. Like, if you don't address the very, very basic issue of massive wealth inequality in the UK, you're not going to get anywhere.
It's you I'm messaging. I'm trying to be subtle, but it's not working.
Why are you giving me the shut up phase?
Dear me.
But yeah, I mean, it's the same. People waiting on waiting lists for trans care, HRT. People waiting for. I know people who've been given ADHD diagnosis and then been told that their GP doesn't prescribe ADHD meds. There's a complete confusion across the board with it. But all of the things that they're talking about, even though, yeah, it's better that there'll be new skills centers. It's better that we'll have better healthcare for mental health care for kids, but also make people's lives better. Stop taking like £4 million donations from weirdos. Stop like getting hundreds of £1,000s in donations for your clothes for whatever. Like, just help a little bit. Like, try. I think it was Maya who I had on the other day, Barbie Advocates, who was fantastic. He said that like 80% of health outcome is like impacted by like societal factors, not the direct healthcare that you receive. Prevention is the absolute best way to handle any of these issues, and it seems like we're just going in circles. Just having a look. Yeah, autistic children being denied mental health support. Hey, Jacqueline. Yeah, I mean, I got told by my GP when I said that I thought it might be ADHD. My GP said, well, everybody's feeling anxious right now. When my sister, I've had friends who have been for ADHD referrals, and they've been told, one GP literally yelled at them and said, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know anything about ADHD. When you're looking at things like autism diagnosis, only 15% of people with autism diagnoses are in work. And it's not, and instead of looking at how you can make the workplace more accessible for people or make these things more manageable long term, it's just, okay, well, we're not going to let you try anymore. Like, oh, your salary is too low and you've got a bad quality of life. Well, we're going to give you less benefits then.
So why do we think? And thank you to is it Jihadabad? Is that how you pronounce?
Jihadabad, yeah. I think I did.
Yeah,
Thanks. Did I appreciate before? I think I did.
What?
We'd give
did
again.
you? Well, thanks anyway for gifting the 5 turn left memberships. You've also said stop taking clothes donations. So you want Kid Starve, our glorious leader, to walk around naked. I'm very smart. I think. Why do we think Labour are sort of going down this route, and is it? I don't want to sound like one of those sort of liberal centrists who keep with this whole, oh well, just wait for the budget, just wait and see what happens, because obviously a lot of these things that have been announced are not, you're on mute, a lot of these things that have been announced are not they're not budget issues. They're not budget issues anyway. A lot of them, like the things that have already been announced and have been spoken about. And sorry, it's just us technical. Oh yes, sorry, very sorry. Give me 1 second.
What's happening?
I'm just making. You can probably hear me a lot better now.
Oh shit! Yeah, you sound great. Why are you all? You're all up in my ears now.
Yeah, I am all up in your ears. No, sorry about that. Which is why my mute wasn't working. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, sorry. It's been one of those today, guys. Special shout out to Turn Left's Curtis, who just sent me a little cheeky message behind the scenes to say, I think you're on the wrong microphone. It's like, yes, I am. Well noticed. So when I checked before we went live and I said to Sneaker, do I sound all right? And she was like, yeah, you sound great. It's like, cool. So I just trusted that I was on the right microphone. Do apologize to you all for that.
I'm not a technical. Listen, I'm a marketing person and a TikTok creator. I'm not a doctor.
So yeah, as I was saying, in terms of not not wanting to preempt the budget and all that nonsense, I do think there is an element of that. I think, okay, well, they're saying all these things, but Starmer also said that he was going to nationalize the rail industry, and then when he finally announced he was going to, it wasn't really national. I mean, he's doing it, but not quite how he said it was going to.
Yeah.
He also said that he was going to do lots of other nice things that he's then changed his mind on after he's gained power. So I think with a lot of things that Labour say at the moment, I sort of take it with a pinch of salt until we actually see what goes into legislation. But what worries me is the rhetoric around it and the fact that they do seem to be going after, like someone pointed out earlier, why are they going after people on benefits and not the rich?
Yeah.
And it can only be to appease a certain group of people, right? But okay, we talked about reform and the fact that they were doing well in elections earlier on. But in reality, they're not. There isn't an election next week. There is, but not here. Do you know what I mean? Like it's 5 years away, so they don't need to appeal to the reform voters anymore. They don't need to. So why the fuck are they going after people on benefits? It just makes no sense to me. And I mean, I know why they're doing it, because they're just as corrupt as the rest of them. But it just, it upsets me.
It upsets me too, and I think it upsets all of us.
Oh, we've lost you. We've lost you, Sneaker.
What?
You disappeared from the screen and then came back. I don't know. Your camera quality is really crap at the moment.
Well, fuck. It's probably because my husband's streaming football or something.
Probably. You know why this is, guys? I'm going to do that shameless plug again. You know why this is? This is because
help us.
we are doing this from our homes with our own little setup, and we don't have we don't have £1 million studio. We don't have the backing of the BBC or Sky News or even I mean, I think we're running a tighter ship than GB News do. Certainly, I think they have more technical issues than we do. But it's difficult. It's difficult, and it's because we're here on a voluntary basis. So if you guys can help us out, please do. You know what to do. Follow the link in the little scrolly bar at the bottom. turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, and help us out so that Sneakerit's camera quality can be improved, and so that I remember to turn on the right microphone.
Yeah, please help us with our training and everything. When Angela Davis said that freedom is a constant struggle, I think she may have specifically been talking about our tech, because
Definitely.
this is, but every time it's a struggle.
Why are Labour so shit, Sneaker? Is I think what we were saying.
Oh, so many reasons. So please help. So I think someone Abodi made a really good point in the chat that the incompetence charge it's a very nuanced one. It's very easy it's by design, right? You choke the life out of a public service and then you turn around and say that public service isn't working. The only solution is to privatize it. That's why we get this. It's the same thing as we've seen with DWP, but also when it comes to the NHS, any public services, make them as shit as possible by working people to the bone and making them want to quit or go into different sectors, and then tell people that we have to privatize. Why is the Labour Party so shit? Because they are also part of the same system that benefits from the same donations the Tories did. We now have two very clear causes behind what we're seeing in the country. One of them is what people could feasibly blame, which is the massive growth in wealth inequality that we've seen in the last few years. Wealth inequality is like growing in the UK like massively. We're one of the worst developed countries when it comes to, like, out of the developing countries, we are the worst for wealth inequality, one of the worst. But if you blame that, then you have to deal with the fact that those people who are making so much money and who are benefiting off of our systems and going through tax evasions, loopholes, all of this shit, building capital, we have to actually go up against them. And the Labour Party didn't choose to do that. They chose to work with that system. So the other option is you have to pivot and find someone else to blame. And as the Tories did, like, they played like bingo with it. They ran through every single possible person that they could blame other than themselves. And I think Labour are going to do the exact same thing, because fundamentally, Labour don't want change. They want to win at the game that already exists.
But the question is, and we know the answer, right, is why are Labour choosing to blame the poorest in society, and not the richest in society? And I mean, one of the reasons for that is because the Labour Party are now a party that takes £4 million worth of donations from the Cayman Islands, right? If you're willing to accept huge lump sums of money from multimillionaires, billionaires, hedge funds, even people like Gifts and whatever from Lord Ali, and this is why the gift thing pisses me off, because I understand the argument. This is another Callum rant. It's like the Curtis rants, only with me. The thing that pisses me off about this is that I understand the argument of oh, well, it's only clothes, and Boris Johnson's done a lot worse, so we shouldn't put so much pressure on Starmer because we're holding him to a higher standard. I mean, we're holding Starmer to the exact same standard that we held the previous government to. The mainstream media is certainly holding him to a higher standard than they did the previous government, but that wasn't because the only reason for that is because they didn't hold the previous government to any form of standard, right? Whereas now they are, whereas we've always been consistent in holding governments to account. But the thing that annoys me is that it isn't just a dress for his wife. It isn't just a pair of glasses. It isn't just tickets to see a performance. It's cash for access, and it's bribery. And it's really interesting that the Labour Party have gone from being this party that under Jeremy Corbyn was all about the working people and the working class and about helping the poorest in society. Keir Starmer came along and said that Corbyn's manifesto, were the founding principles of what Labour's all about, and that he vowed to continue, the party with those principles in mind. And then over the course of the few years that he's been leader of the party, while he's been getting closer to power, all those principles have gone out of the window. And suddenly, while they've been taking all these dodgy donations from the richest, while they've been taking all these gifts from their millionaire mates, all of a sudden, those millionaires who should be bearing, those with the broadest shoulders, who are supposed to be bearing the fucking the weight, according to Starmer, they're suddenly getting off scot-free. I mean, there's rumours, I don't know whether there's any truth in it, but there's rumours at the moment that some of the policies, like the VAT on schools, like the scrapping of the nom-dom status, there's a lot of rumours as to whether these are even going to be included in the budget, or whether these are going to be scrapped or put on hold. I mean, the government have come out and denied the rumours and said, no, we're definitely going ahead with them. But it will be interesting to see what happens on the 30th of October with this, and whether they do actually go ahead with that. The fact that the rumours are even out there, I mean, there was rumours about Sue Gray going for weeks, and then she did. You know, where the rumours exist, there's often something to them, certainly when they're leaked from within government. But the thing that pisses me off about it is that you have to ask, you have to wonder, if the government weren't accepting these donations, if they weren't accepting these gifts from these rich folk, would they have, you know, turned on a dime the way they have to say, oh, actually, we need to, you know, benefit fraud is such a big problem that we need to go after that, when we know that tax fraud is the thing that takes the biggest chunk out of the economy, money lost through tax fraud. I don't have the statistics to hand, but we know that the money that is lost through fraud within the benefits system is absolutely, I mean, it may as well not even be something that we worry about. The amount of money that is lost through benefit fraud is so small in comparison to the amount that we lose through million and billionaires and the companies that are owned by these people, who are fraudulently not tax avoidance, you know, not tax avoidance that's done through loopholes and whatever, you know, actual tax fraud that is illegal currently under the rules and regulations that we have in this country. And they're not going after that. They're saying, oh, well, Mary, who lives next door, might be getting an extra £2.50 a month, and we can't be having that.
I mean, this is the thing that is part of why Labour is doomed in this sense, but also it just doesn't make sense to me, is that we have had, like, the one thing that the far right and the far left have in common is that we all agree the government is corrupt, right? We all agree government is corrupt. They're in the pockets of the rich. They're in the pockets of the elite. Whether you think that's people who went to uni or like billionaires, you decide. They all think that that's the problem. But when you're on the left, you think, okay, but they're distracting from the real enemy, which is the mega billionaires who are in charge of everything, who've never paid a day of tax in their life, who threaten to hold the entire country hostage in order to make sure they get the political representation they want. And if you're on the far right, you look at it and you go, yeah, so it's actually not. So we need to focus on the real issue, which is these incredibly powerless people who also, these people who are in charge, who we apparently don't trust, have been telling us of the problem the entire time anyway. Like, I don't understand how, if they think, well, yeah, no, the Tories were completely corrupt, they're all the same, but they were right on the anti-immigrant thing. And our problem is that they weren't anti-immigrant enough. Like, it's so clear at this stage what the obvious threat is. But I think from the way that the reason that we turned so quickly in 2019 from Corbyn to what we've now got is that we have 100% not sold out to Big McDonald's. Chance to be a fine thing. The reason that we've got what we've got is because, in the same way, after Operation, the Israeli attack on Gaza in 2008, 2009, 23-day war. During that time period, it was one of the it was a period where people were most openly critical of Israel in the media. What we've seen since then is an extreme consolidation from Israel of that kind of making sure that rhetoric is never allowed back out there in terms of donations, in terms of political parties. What we saw in 2016 was Jeremy Corbyn almost getting a hung parliament. That was the biggest threat to our system that we've seen in a really, really long time. That will have prompted massive backlash from all of these different powers that be. They'll also have seen that the Tories were slowly getting more and more incompetent at being system representatives, without sounding like a conspiracy theorist. I think Keir Starmer thought that he was more clever than these people, and that it was like, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm going to navigate this whole thing, and then I'm going to improve the situation. And then he obviously was just another incapable mid guy, and it's completely thrown him off. Just quickly before I finish this rant, Emma, what is the lipstick? It is Intense Volume Matte Le Rouge Determination. That is not a helpful screenshot. With my extremely blurry camera as well, you can't see shit. I don't think it's L'Oreal, but it is a intense volume mat. If you search it.
Is it animal testing friendly?
Probably.
Hope so.
I'll be honest, I don't know if this is mine.
Oh, you just found it, did you, down the back of the sofa, or?
People in my life will attest to the fact that I do have a habit of robbing from them by accident. And I do have it now. But if it's not that one, the other one that it could be is the MAC Red Rock lipstick. It could be both also, if one of them came off at one point or another.
For anyone that's interested, I'm currently wearing strawberry chapstick. So there we go. Just if anyone wants lips like me, there you go.
Cal's skin does look better than mine.
Yeah,
it's my husband's lipstick. Just throw it to the husband straight away. Cal's skin is glowing. I feel ratty, so...
Thank you. My skin is not glowing at all. It's the benefit of having a ring light and the rest of the lights off. That's all it is. If I turn this off and you look at me properly, then it's the candle that's all the way over there. Yeah, that's definitely what it is.
Backlight.
Guys, what would you like? Oh, but actually, before I ask this, just to bring up Emma's other point here.
I'm just going to jump off for one moment.
Go for it.
We'll be back. I'm going to refresh.
Yeah, you're gonna refresh is what you were saying, but that's fine. So Emma, you said that the anxiety that surrounds just dealing with universal credit is crazy. I've been on disability for a few years now, and I'm constantly stressed about it being taken or getting into trouble for something. And you're right. I mean, it's quite scary, because when that is what you're relying on, when you need that income, when you need that financial support, and your health is relying on whether you get it. If you're suffering from a health condition that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Not stable, shall we say? Something that can be, that can be worse on some days and be. There's a proper term for it, but I can't remember at the moment. When you're suffering from something that can be worse on some days than it is on others, it's understandable why it's so frightening, because you're getting support, but if you then get reassessed, I mean, I saw something, I think it was on one of Sneaker's videos. I think it was the video actually that she'd made that she was talking about earlier. I'm sure someone commented on it and said that they had PIP taken off them because the only thing that had changed was an injury that they'd had now healed, but the disability and the health conditions that they were suffering from was still exactly the same and hadn't changed at all. But because they'd had this period where they had an injury, and then suddenly the injury had healed, they had the PIP taken off them. And it's not how we should be treating people. It's just not okay. It really isn't. So yeah, I'm sorry that you experienced that, but we need to see an improvement, and I just worry that we're not getting it. I just worry that we're not getting it. Simon turned off by accident and now on the countdown clock. Well, that's funny. So Simon turned off by accident and he's now on the countdown clock. So by the time Simon sees us reading this, you're sorted now, are you? I was going to say, by the time you see us reading this, we're probably going to be in bed. Brilliant.
We're going to finish this and just go straight. I'm straight to sleep. Sorry, I'm back now. Is my internet any better? Do I look any better?
It seems to be, yeah. Emma's also said I scored 0 on a PIP assessment when I was literally housebound with CFS. Yeah, yeah. The only thing I could advise there is to appeal if you didn't, but it might be too late for you now. Sneaker, I'm just looking at the time. It's 9:30 already.
That is very close to our bedtime.
It is. What would you like to do, and what viewers tell us, guys watching, what would you like us to do? Because there is something else that I'd like to discuss, but it's whether we've got the time to, or whether we should do it another day. But it's that serious issue that we talked about earlier about what's been going on in Lebanon and Israel's attack on UN peacekeepers. And I do think it's important that we talk about it, but I don't want to start a discussion on it now if we're going to have to wrap up and not do it the justice it needs.
That's my thinking. I'm not sure about doing it as like especially at the end of our very casual, silly chat, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is it something? Is it going to be covered tomorrow in the show as well?
It. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I
Curtis is hosting.
imagine
Curtis, what are you covering in tomorrow's show? Send us a message
Curtis,
and let us know.
Curtis is omnipresent. He's definitely watching.
It can be. Well, to be honest, it probably will be. I would imagine it will be.
Yeah, Becca said keep it for tomorrow because I feel like we may go from it. It feels like we're not doing it the right amount of justice if we do it now.
Curtis says yeah. Curtis says yeah, probably. So
I knew
yeah,
he'd hear.
Yeah, yes. Let's leave it for. Don't see why I wouldn't. He says let's leave it for tomorrow to be covered when it can be covered, when it can be covered properly, because I'll just end up on another rant and I'll get annoyed and angry, which nobody wants to see. So yeah.
Yeah, Jihadi Baddy's thrown a quick one in. It's funny seeing Western government's responses to attacks on. Stop messing with my Elden Ring files, Curtis. Yeah, I mean, I think Curtis will be able to go through. I think Curtis is going to go through in a lot of detail tomorrow in terms of some of the hypocrisy that we've seen. It all ties into this same conversation, right? It's all about consolidating power with a ridiculous, awful, violent group across the world. Like it's the people shouldn't be allowed to have the amount of power that we've given. That has been given to Israel. People shouldn't be governments shouldn't be able to have this level of power. Individuals shouldn't be able to hold this level of power. Political parties shouldn't hold this level of power. Billionaires shouldn't have this level of power. But I think it'll be better to go through it into a lot more detail tomorrow. Simon said, I'm going to Belmarsh tomorrow to show support for Palestine Action Defendants at 9:30. Also, before we do go, really quick shout out to one of my followers, Jay, who was covered in the news this week as Youth Demand. The group Youth Demand put the poster up at the National Gallery.
Yes.
Of the mother, the Palestinian mother with her child. That was one of my followers got arrested and spent the night in a cell, and that was the reason that he didn't tune into my last live stream. And I was not forgiven.
Have you managed to speak to him since then? How's he? How's he
he's
helping
all
up?
good.
And what's happening to them? Are they being? I imagine there'll be a court case now. I know you probably can't talk about stuff if there's a legal case, but
no, from what I understand, he spent the night in a cell. But he's like okay at the minute, and that he's safe. He's not He's not being held or anything like that. But really, really proud of both of them. Those protesters, I think they were both like 19 and 20. Managed to continue speaking whilst people were recording all the way through getting arrested, like tackled to the ground by this absolute dickhead. So yeah, I just like it. There's a lot of like good on everyone who's like going to actual like in-person action stuff over the next 100%.
And that conversation we were having earlier about actually taking action and making a difference. I think all those things really help. And even those sorts of actions. I mean, we saw it with Just Stop Oil recently again with the soup over Van Gogh again after Phoebe and Anna got sentenced. And I think with all of these actions that are taking place, whether it's the fighting, the serious threat of climate change, whether it's to stand up against a genocide that's being committed against the people of Palestine, history is going to look back on these protesters and see them as the people that did the right thing.
Yeah.
And that did something. And there was a really, really powerful, I don't know who made it, but there was a really powerful sort of ad film that I saw recently set in the future where it's, you might have seen it, and it's essentially a museum to the genocide in Gaza and Palestine. And it's all the kids there with the parents, and they're asking, the parents, well, why didn't you do anything? You knew that you could see this was going on. Why didn't you act? Why didn't you do something? And I remember in school learning about the atrocities that took place at the hands of the German government in the 1930s, and the horrors that were committed against Jewish people and others during the Holocaust. And I remember there sitting and thinking, like, how could people just allow this to happen? And that was at a time when we didn't have. They knew what was going on, but it's often been said that the genocide in Palestine is one of the first to ever be live streamed, and this isn't like anything that's gone before where we can pretend that we can't see it. This isn't something where you can sort of have plausible deniability, where you can just say, oh, well, I didn't pick up the newspaper, therefore I didn't know it was happening. Like,
Yeah.
this
Oh, I
is
don't do
everywhere.
politics.
Yeah, I don't know politics, so I'm
Mhm.
not like, this is everywhere, and it is very clear to see what is happening. And excuse me, I think that, anyone who is doing anything to prevent this or to act on this or to send a message to government to say that, it's not okay and that you need to do something to act,
Yeah.
deserves a lot of, a lot more than just respect.
A
So,
lot of love.
full credit to Jay and everyone else. Was it
All of
Youth
you.
Demand, did you say?
Yeah, Youth Demand. And yeah, Simon in the chat going to Belmarsh tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very. I was looking at a suffragettes history thing in Manchester a while back. It's like a walking tour. It was boring, but they were talking about the suffragettes, and one of my colleagues was like, "Do you think there were people at the time who like thought the suffragettes were like just really annoying?" And I was like, "Literally, yeah. Like the reason they got called suffragettes is because they weren't being called suffragists. This was like the more offensive term. It was a Daily Mail." Journalist who came up with that name. Like, yeah, every single time in history you've had protesters, they've always been told that, oh, but they shouldn't be doing it that way, or they shouldn't be causing these issues. And everybody always looks back on them and goes, oh, they were heroes. And a lot of the people who say they were heroes are the same people who shat on them at the time. So fuck everybody who's complicit and silent in a motivational way. I don't know if that is that positive. Is that a positive ending?
I
Fuck
don't
those
know
guys.
I don't know that it is a positive ending, but
I think your ending was more positive. We'll switch it round in the clips.
yeah. And if you're watching live, just pretend that we said it the opposite way.
Yeah, just regroup.
In which case, do
I
you
feel
want
like
to
my
do?
internet's going wrong.
It is, but that said, would you like to do the honors before we go? Given I've been doing it all throughout the show.
Yes. If you can see that my screen is blurry right now, you might be wondering why, and it's because Turn Left is entirely run by us on a voluntary basis. We have jobs. We don't have good camera equipment. We have some good camera equipment. It's getting slightly better, and with your support as a channel, we might be able to get ourselves to 720p. But it's only with your support that we'll be able to do that. You don't have to only be a member. You don't have to be a Patreon supporter. You can support us anytime over at turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. You can make a one-off donation anytime. You can gift memberships. But also, we are trying to build these platforms into things that can generate revenue and things that we can turn into like full-time work for people. We want to be able to put a lot more of this content out. We want to be able to represent a lot more of the different voices and opinions that we're seeing. So even helping us grow this platform, sharing, engaging, commenting, anything that you can do to really help us build our voices is very heavily appreciated. I'm currently using an old iPhone that I stole from an old job as my camera. And if that and it's just turned off.
And that right there is proof, just in case you needed it, that we're not lying, right?
That's literally just happened. Sorry.
You couldn't make this shit up.
The iPhone that I stole's run out of charge.
Oh, is that it gone now
It's
for the rest of the
literally
show?
run out of charge. I'm gonna see if I can join from my other shit phone. Give me a
Wonderful.
minute.
So while Sneaker's doing that, something else that you can do, if any of you are on TikTok, follow us on TikTok. We're at Turn Left Media on TikTok. Once we get that TikTok account up to 10,000 followers, we'll be able to join the Creator Fund, and then TikTok will pay us for views. All you will have to do is watch and engage with our content. Comment, like, repost it. Obviously, engage in the content. Don't just like follow us and then run away. But well, you can if you wish. But stuff like that helps a massive amount as well, because if we're able to get if we're able to get to a point on there where we can earn money through there as well, it all helps us in the pot. And you don't even have to pay us anything if we do it that way. All you have to do is press a button and hit follow. So get on TikTok and support us there. We're on Instagram, and if you're watching us on YouTube and you're watching this live and you're not subscribed to us, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. When the clips go up in the next couple of days, share them out, repost them. If you're watching on Twitter, retweets or reposts as it is now. And again, hit that follow button if you don't already.
Hate Twitter.
You, as much as we're not gonna fix the camera equipment just on views, but we certainly appreciate it.
It'll help.
Any support that you can give us is really helpful to the channel. Sneaker, you still haven't got a camera, you know that?
I am so close.
You're coming.
Just
cool. I thought because it turned on before, so I thought you knew that it was there.
Yeah, it was connected very briefly, and then I accidentally knocked it with my thumb. And for just a few pounds a month, you guys can help me not do this.
If you go to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, you can give a one-off donation, or you can, if you wish, you can subscribe to us longer term. Yeah, I'm seeing 56 likes, but we've got 178 people watching in total. So if some of you are watching on Twitter, then just hit that repost button, and we'll be ever grateful. But yes, let us know if there's anything that you want to see from us as well. Obviously, we've got the 3 shows we do Normal Islands live on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays most weeks. I'll say most weeks because we didn't do Friday, but we've got this debrief that we do, which is, as you can see, much more laid back and chilled out, that we do on the Sunday. But you know, as we welcome back,
seemingly in the 80s.
As we grow, we would like to provide other content as well. So if there's anything that you'd like to see from us, please let us know. If there's anything that you don't want to see from us, let us know. We won't listen. No, we will. And thanks, Emma. So nice to see the channel growing. Yeah, and to be fair, we wouldn't be Callum and Sneaker's hair routine.
Hey now.
L'Oreal is what I use, and a hairdryer. That's basically it. What's your secret, Sneaker? What's your secret, Sneaker?
I cut my own hair the other day, and it's really dry now.
Is it?
That's
it looks good. I need some advice on getting rid of the dead ends though, because I don't want to have to pay.
I would not. I mean, I've very much got streamer hair, whereby it looks okay from the front. And then if I turn around, it's the same as my posture.
That's fine. You can tell when I've washed it, because when I've washed it, I have it down, and when I haven't washed it, I have it tied back and I look like this. So
Cal's got gorgeous hair.
Whenever you see me with my hair down, it's because I do, but I've got this awful receding hairline that it's funny because on TikTok, we don't get it on YouTube because you guys are absolutely amazing, by the way, and the Turn Left supporters on the whole are fucking brilliant. But on TikTok, as Sneaker will attest to, there's lots of trolling. But the numbers of people that come in my comments and point out the fact that I've got a receding hairline, as if like I don't look in the mirror and I don't see what my hair looks like. People will literally. Someone commented the other day. They just came on and they just commented bald, and I'm like, yeah, because this is bald, isn't it? Like, come on. It's just one word, just bald.
Just so unfair.
It's like you're not even contributing to the content.
Bald. Just saying.
Curtis has great hair too. Am I right? No, I don't. I'm not a fan of Curtis's hair, actually. I think it's a bit.
I think it's dry.
Yeah, and he's trying to be too much like you, Sneaker, by dyeing it blonde.
I think that too, and I have noticed that. But I won't say it. Looks better than the iPhone this apparently. I will say that I think one of the issues that I had with my internet was that I had it on like this zoomy follow thing, and I think it might have been slowing down my my internet speed. But hey, why not realize that at the very end of the show?
At least you didn't do half the podcast on the wrong microphone.
Like I don't know how to ask people more for support.
We don't need to. It's fine.
This on its own should have indicated it. But yes.
Again, thanks to everyone that's gifted memberships. That's new members. That's joined us as well. We are grateful for you all. And we will be returning. Why am I wrapping up? It's your hosting tonight. You wrap up. We're co-hosting, but you can do the wrap up.
Well,
what's happening tomorrow, Sneaker?
So tomorrow night we are going to have Curtis back in the house. He's going to be hosting. He's going to be taking you through everything that's happened over the weekend. I believe he's going to be joined by Helena tomorrow. Mm-hmm. No Justice, who a huge friend of the show, big fan as well, and I know a lot of people in the chat love her too. That is going to be at 7:30, I imagine, give or take a 10-minute countdown. Do join us for that. We will be back next Sunday with another debrief. I don't think I'm actually going to be on for a little while because I'm going to be away through to end of October. So you will be in the capable hands of Cal, Curtis, Lewis, and Cog. I think that's all. Yeah, don't forget to follow us. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share. Don't know if we've mentioned. Please support us if you can. Have a lovely, restful evening. Stay strong. Keep supporting each other. Love you.
And love you all. See you again. Take care, guys. Thanks a lot.
See you soon all. Bye.
Bye.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.